Okay, guys, first story today is called Baby Polar by Yannick Murphy. Baby Polar stood between his mother's legs. He imagined she was a cave, only the cave wasn't made of stone or rock, but of her thick fur and warm body. Baby Polar liked it there. He didn't feel the icy wind there, and he could hear the beating of his mother's heart. "Look, a storm is coming," Mama Polar Bear said. Baby Polar saw dark clouds crossing over the blue sky. Soon flakes of snow began to fall. Baby Polar wished he could go outside and play. "Can I go out and play in the snow?" asked Baby Polar. "Only for a little while. This might be a big storm," Mama Polar said. Baby Polar walked out of his cave. The snow was beautiful. He held out his paw and watched the pretty crystals melt on his pad. He turned his face up to the falling snow. He held out his tongue and tasted the white flakes. The snow started coming down hard. It started to get deep. So Baby Polar lay down in the snow with his round belly facing the sky. He moved his furry legs up and down. Swish, swish. He was making wings. He stood up and saw the shape he had made in the snow. "Look at that snow goose I made," called Baby Polar to Mama Polar. "Not now," Mama Polar said. "The storm is coming closer. It's time to come back." "But I want to keep playing," Baby Polar said as he skated across the ice. He looked behind him at the trails he had made. He made loop-de-loops, he made crisscrosses, he zigzagged, and then the polar bear noticed the sky had grown very dark. He couldn't see his loop-de-loops or crisscrosses. It was snowing so hard that he couldn't see his own paw in front of him. The wind was blowing so strong that it hurt his face. He wished he were with his mother. He wished he could feel her warm body around him like a cave. "Mama Polar, where are you?" he called. But there was no answer, only the howling of the cold wind. Baby Polar started to cry. His tears froze and stuck to his cheeks like diamonds. Oh no. Baby Polar wanted to get out of the storm. Great gusts of wind whipped through the air. They blew falling flakes of snow from side to side and from here to there. He kept walking. He came to a white hill. The hill was made of snow. He dug into the snow. He dug and he dug, the white snow flying behind him. He made a big hole in the hill and stood inside. It was warm, like a cave. Baby Polar liked it there. He didn't feel the icy wind there, and he could hear the beating of his mother's heart. Mama's heart? Baby Polar jumped outside the cave and poked at the hill. "Mama Polar, is that you?" he said. Then Mama Polar shook her fur coat so that the snow fell off of her. "Yes, I am Mama Polar, but who are you?" she said. "Are you a little snowball that has rolled into me?" "I'm not a snowball, I'm me. I'm your Baby Polar." Baby Polar shook his coat so that the snow fell off and Mama Bear could see him. Mama Polar laughed and kissed the top of his head. "Why, yes, you are my Baby Polar, aren't you? But what are you doing standing out here in the storm? Come back inside and keep warm." Now that he was with his Mama Polar, the storm was beautiful to watch. He stood between his mother's legs and imagined she was a cave. Only the cave wasn't made of stone or rock, but of her thick fur and warm body. He didn't feel the icy wind there, and he could hear the beating of his mother's strong polar heart. The end. Okay, here's our felt board activity. It is Polar Bear, what do you hear? Here is our Polar Bear, what do you hear? I hear a lion roaring at me. Here he goes, he's roaring. Lion, lion, what do you hear? I hear a hippopotamus snorting at me. Here he's snorting. Hippopotamus, hippopotamus, what do you hear? I hear a flamingo fluting at me. Go. Flamingo, flamingo, what do you hear? I hear a zebra braying at me. He's braying. Zebra, zebra, what do you hear? I hear a boa constrictor hissing at me. Boa constrictor, what do you hear? I hear an elephant trumping in my ear. Here he goes. Elephant, elephant, what do you hear? I hear a leopard snarling in my ear. Here he goes, snarling. Leopard, leopard, what do you hear? I hear a peacock yelping in my ear. Peacock, peacock, what do you hear? I hear a walrus bellowing in my ear. There he goes. Walrus, walrus, what do you hear? I hear a zookeeper whistling in my ear. There he goes. Zookeeper, zookeeper, what do you hear? I hear children. Here he goes. I hear children. That's what I hear. Okay, the next story we're doing is Panda and Polar Bear by Matthew J. Bake. In a place where spring met winter, there lived two kinds of bears. Where it was green and grassy lived the panda bears, and where it was white and wintry lived the polar bears. But in between loomed a tall, steep, and slippery cliff. It was too tall for a panda bear to climb up, and too tall for the polar bear to climb down, and so the two never met. Until one curious polar bear became too curious. What was beyond his white, wintry world? He walked closer to the edge of the cliff, and closer still, perhaps too close. Luckily, the polar bear landed in a patch of soft, squidgy mud. It was sticky and brown, and yick. Stomp, stomp, stomp. Something was coming. The polar bear ran, but the cliff was too tall, too steep, and too slippery to climb up. Stomp, stomp, stomp. The polar bear covered his eyes. He peeked from behind his muddy paws. There he goes, muddy paws. And I saw a strange, splotchy bear staring at him. "Are you new?" asked the strange, splotchy bear. "Do you want to play?" Said the polar bear. The splotchy bear took this as a yes. In no time, they were climbing trees and playing hide-and-seek and following the leader. Finally, they sat down for a snack. Yuck, thought the polar bear. This bamboo is too hard. He had a better idea. "Let's fish," he said to his new splotchy friend. The polar bear looked into the water and gasped. Could it be? He wasn't plain white anymore. He had turned into a splotchy bear. Splash! He swam out and snatched up a fish, and proudly presented his catch. "You're fading," the Splotchy Bear said. "Where are your panda patches?" "Panda patches," the polar bear replied. "Aren't you a panda bear?" asked the Splotchy Bear. "No," he said quietly. "I'm a polar bear. I'm all white, just like snow." He sighed. What terrifically splotchy panda bear would want to be friends with a plain white polar bear? But the panda's face brightened. "I've never seen snow," he said. "What's it like?" So the polar bear explained all about snow, but the more he talked, the more he remembered, and the more he remembered, the more he missed. Suddenly, the polar bear was homesick. "I'll get you home," said the panda bear. "But the cliff," the polar bear replied. "I'll think of something," said the panda. So he thought, and he thought, and he thought, until he couldn't think any more. "Maybe we could use bamboo," suggested the polar bear. "My mother told me never to play with food, but I think it's okay this time," said Panda Bear. Together they made a very long ladder. A very, very long ladder. When it was finished, the time had come for the polar bear to go. He looked at the panda bear. Would they still be friends after he left? The polar bear wanted to ask, but he wasn't sure how. Instead, he turned and slowly climbed up the ladder. And he climbed, and he climbed. The higher he went, the harder the wind blew. The ladder began to shake, and then it was suddenly still. The polar bear looked down. There was the panda bear, holding onto the ladder with all his might. "Don't worry," the panda called. "I've got you." In fact, he's with his parents. They had each other. Look at that. They're out playing. And a lot more to discover. The end.